computer. 3, 2, 1, and we're live. Let's go.
Hello guys, welcome back to the XXL podcast, episode number 21.
Yeah.
Woohoo! Yeah, it's crazy, man. I can't believe we made it this far. So
loving it.
Really excited to see how the next 20 podcasts go with the main man, Josh, and myself, Drew. Josh, who do we have on the podcast today, my friend?
Today we have the guest, Tony Mantz, also known as Jack the Bear. I want to find out where that name come from. He's a bear, he's tall, he's massive, he's got loads of tats, and he's got super loose lips. So if you don't like swear words or profanities, then you might as well mute this one.
Monetized.
Yeah. So without further ado, let me welcome in Tony Mantz. I haven't seen him for about 3-4 years. Lives in Australia, Melbourne, and he's just joined now. There he is. How are we, brother? Are you good?
No, hang on. Two seconds. I'm being very, very rude.
That's all right.
All right, which tab are we on? Here we go. There we go.
There we are.
Yeah, have a look at you, you handsome fuck. You're all jacked and fucking bastard.
Thank you, Tony. Cheers.
It's all good, Drew. And Josh is looking like just shit. What's going on? What's on, mate? What happened?
Yeah,
what happened,
classic.
Oh, I do love that.
Yeah.
You can tell your Uncle Jack. It's all right. You know?
There you go. Yeah, that's it. Tony, how you been, mate?
Let me get my lighting. Let me get my lighting a little better.
Yeah, cool.
And just because you're in all of your and let me just move that fucking lamp, because that's not very cinematic, is it?
Yeah, that's it. Oh, look at that. That's better.
Oh, lovely.
So fucking my online fucking Spielberg masterclass is paying. Here we are.
Oh, love it.
So, Tony, let me just do a very quick intro, mate. Tony,
Yeah,
Drew, Tony.
Quick intro, quick show, quick exit.
That's it.
This is going to be. You're
Keeping
going to
it
regret this. No, go on.
million miles an
It's
hour.
lovely to meet you.
Yeah. So, Tony, well, how you been for a start? How you been in this pandemic?
Do the fucking intro. You're a professional woman. Do the fucking intro. Come on. Hello there. Welcome to fucking.
I've done that. I could do it while you're here if you wish. I could do it while you're here.
No. Thank you for asking, Josh. First of all, thanks very much for the opportunity to come on your podcast. And lovely to meet you, Drew. And as I say to quite a few people that invite me on their podcast, especially if they're new, don't blame me if this is the last thing you'll ever do. This will be the death of your podcast. I know when people get me on, mate, it's like, right, they've run out of options. They've scraped the bottom of the barrel. They're just clutching at straws. And but all jokes aside, thank you so much for inviting me on. It's a pleasure to be here. Josh, so lovely to see you after all these years. We haven't spoken for a little while.
Yeah.
But it's obvious to see that you're looking well, my friend. And when you invited me onto the podcast, who am I to say no? I just appreciate the opportunity to be on to talk to you lads. So thank you so much.
Oh, well, thank you, mate. Thank you. So, yeah, like we were saying before, like, how you been in this kind of time? What's it been like over in Oz and everything like that?
Specifically in relation to with COVID and isolation?
Yeah, kind of, yeah, like,
everything.
Yeah, how you've coped with it and, like, general feel of the country.
Look, personally, I've been okay. I think initially when the shit first hit the fan, there was, of course, the initial anxiety that came up for me, like, okay, what's going to happen? What's this going to mean? Because we, in times of uncertainty, especially when it's thrust upon us in a very, quite forcefully and significantly as it has. But very quickly, I realised that, I can only control my controllables, which is, how I think, how I perceive it,
Sure.
and what I do immediately in response to that. It's been an interesting time observing other people, though, in terms of how they have been dealing with things. And when you sit back and just watch people and see, how for some people it's like the end of the world, and they don't cope very well, and other people are able to take it in their stride. I think, as you know, Josh, our one of the great mentor of ours, Peter Sage.
Yep.
How he talks about being comfortable with uncertainty and understanding that life is a non-linear experience, and that things are going to happen in ways that you least expect, and so when you can get when you can have a mindset that understands that that's just life, and that you adapt, and you remember that in any time in human history, the two constants have been, are, and will continue to be challenge and opportunity. And so for those of us who are able to step away from the emotional story of what's going on and what we think it means, as opposed to what are the lessons here, what's life trying to teach us. And I think it's been interesting to note for a lot of people, people have talked about, oh wow, this has been a really good time because it's allowed me to slow down. It's allowed me to reconnect with friends. It's allowed me to reprioritize what is important in my life. And I can say quite honestly that I've had a little bit of that reflection and contemplation going on for me. And so sometimes we've got to go through some hard stuff. And while we're in it, we may not appreciate the fact that it's the birthing or, the seeding of better things to come. These things we understand later. It's like how many times we look back at a time in life when it was pretty tough for us, and then we go, well, I'm really glad that happened then, because it wouldn't have produced this result, or I wouldn't have met that person, or I wouldn't be in this job, or I wouldn't be living in this country. And of course, at that time, we don't have the presence of mind to think that. But I think during this time, I'm grateful that I have had enough presence of mind to go, well, this isn't all as bad as it seems. Some good is going to come out of it. And thankfully for me, I think a lot of good has come out of it. So look, I'm good. As far as the country's concerned, mate, I think now that as of midnight last night, they've lifted restrictions on cafes, still with social distancing and all that kind of stuff. We're definitely going to be living a very different way as we move forward. Whether it'll be exactly the same as to what it was, who knows? I don't have a crystal ball. But we are definitely now having to adapt and evolve and change in order to suit what's going on. And we are in a state of flux, and I'm pretty sure we're going to continue to be in a state of flux for some time. But man, look, I live with a sense of optimism. I feel that while I've got breath in my body and I'm upright and I can function and do my day to day pretty much unencumbered, my lot's all right. I think it's from what I gather. Look, I don't watch the news. I don't really tap into but from the little bits and pieces I gather, I think England's probably doing a bit tougher than what we're doing over here, just from what I can ascertain, trying to read between the lines. Yeah. Would that how's it over there for you guys right now?
Yeah. It's a very, like you said, it's a very unstable, uncertain time. The figures, it's very hard because some figures are coming through which are one, then actually they kind of come back saying, oh, well, that wasn't quite the figure. That was actually just one figure that we weren't counting the rest. And I think the current situation really, they started to lift up the lockdown a little bit, so we can go and we can meet with like 6 people, but we all still have to keep like socially distanced, which is, it's lovely. You can do unlimited exercise. They've just opened today car showrooms and outdoor markets, and then just that's pretty much it really. And I think they had to start doing something, because I think they still are in a bit of a situation like this, as people are looking at the government now as they're being treated like kids. And unfortunately, there is an element to that which, you know, you kind of have to. You've got to manage people, but I think that the general public is starting to get a little bit kind of twitchy. I mean, I don't know if you've seen anything that's been shared around Facebook or anything in the UK, friends and stuff like that, but like the beaches are just packed, and I'm meaning packed. Like there's no room for anyone else, and so people are saying, why didn't, you know, it's fine to be able to travel to places and go and see things, but why don't you shut those things down? Because it was just a breeding ground potentially. So it's an interesting situation. It kind of, I've almost found that at the start I was kind of glued to the news. I wanted to know all the updates, but now it kind of is what it is, and I've almost, like you were saying earlier, you kind of just adapt to it, and now that's what you do. It's become the norm that you kind of social distance, that you not so much avoid people, but you kind of give them a wide berth if you're walking and stuff like that. So it's been interesting.
Yeah, and maybe this isn't the podcast, right? Because I'm not really an expert on any of the, you know, the science and all the medical side of things, but I'm just a believer in, you know, when you feel strong and healthy, you are strong and healthy.
Yeah.
So many people, again, one of the reasons why for a long time now, I don't sit down and consciously watch the news or things like that. Things come across, things, you know, things are big enough, they'll come your way and you'll see them online or someone will tell you about it. But I'm just making a conscious choice not to buy into the fear around it all. And I don't look, I'm not interested in getting into arguments with people about conspiracy theories or what this is, or I really have no interest. I find it really non-productive discussion. And it's one of the things that I see that saddens me, how people who are really good mates before just tearing shreds of each other. It's no different to religion or politics or anything like that. And so I keep a wide berth of anyway. So so I understand. I know this is your podcast, but can we just shift off the COVID shit, man?
Yeah, of course.
And get onto some other stuff that's a bit more interesting and hopefully
with pleasure.
Yeah, with pleasure. So I was trying to explain to Drew what your job is. So you're a music masterer. Now that's about a title that I know about, and the rest I don't know anything about. So why don't you kind of give us a little insight into what you do and everything like that?
Yeah, well, absolutely. All right, so I'm known as a mastering engineer, and that is a job that is it's basically the point of the record making process, Drew, where band goes and records, and they mix their record, and then they come to me with a stereo file, which is the finished song, if you will.
Yeah.
And then I take that and I put it through a process where I try to improve on the quality and the fidelity to get it to the best possible sound quality I can get, if you will. And so not only does it sound good and balanced, it's not too much bass, it's not too much treble, it's not too much of anything. Just set, when you hear it, it sounds pleasant, even if you don't understand about. Put it this way, even someone who has no idea about sound quality, if you play them something that's good sound quality and something that's not of a good sound quality, they're just going to differentiate. They're just going to know.
Sure.
So without even understanding why or the technicalities behind it. So my job is to take that song or those songs, get it to sound really good, but just as importantly, they got to not just sound good, but they need to sound good no matter where you play them. So whether you play them on the phone, laptop, big club system, radio, ghetto blaster, whatever it is, car.
Yeah,
it's got to still sound consistent and good on no matter what playback system you put it on. So that really, in a nutshell, is what I do. I've been doing that all of my life, and I still do it and I enjoy it and train young kids in it. And, but my main passion these days. Mastering is still a passion. I owe everything in life to it. But what really is lighting me up more than anything now is being a speaker and a mentor and speaking to we'll call them kids, respectfully.
Sure.
Seems to be 18 to 35 seems to be the main demographic that seem to and overwhelmingly male. I think it's all right. I don't understand about analytics. I've got a friend who helps me with that, and he says, you've got a hugely male following. It's about probably 90% male, which is understandable because music industry is, predominantly male, which is not great, but that's the reality.
Yeah.
And 18 to 35. So I the reason I have a passion for speaking to kids is because because of my childhood and upbringing and how it was for me. And I learned a lot of stuff late in life, and I'm a late bloomer in many respects. And it's funny, people look at me and go, "Oh man, you seem to have your shit together," and I don't necessarily have my shit together. I have it more together now than I ever had. But again, it's that old thing of shit. Imagine if I been where I'm now, which is a great place where I feel really at ease. I feel really calm within my own skin. And I'm 57. So it's taken a very long time for me to get to this point. So there's hope for everybody. But I think, wow, what if I can take this knowledge and what I've learned and help kids so that they can get there sooner than me, so that they can make a bigger impact as they're moving forward in their life. Because, it's all good to talk to men of my age, and I have done and I still do from time to time. But it's a lot harder when you're trying to talk to a bloke of my vintage who isn't open or willing to much, as opposed to a kid who's really keen, really hungry, really open, and want to help themselves, which makes my job a hell of a lot easier. Rather than so, everyone's life matters, and everyone is important in the scheme of things. But to me, I find that working with youth, younger people, young adults, is where I feel I can make the most impact and I have the most satisfaction in doing. And it's a lot easier as well.
Yeah,
it's a lot easier.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I saw a lot of your your Facebook stuff now is very influential, and kind of it desired and inspired for the younger generation in terms of hints and tips and stuff like that. So would you say that that's kind of your passion? Well, not just with obviously the music and stuff like that, but to drive and kind of have become that motivational kind of almost like someone to lean on and understand and teach and kind of help someone on their journey.
Yeah. I think that as I move forward into my life, I still love mastering. I want to keep doing it, and I will continue to do it. But as I get older, I think that I can make, we're talking about growth and, life's about growth and contribution that Peter talks about. And so I feel that, coming from an ethnocentric or world-centric view, I can make a greater contribution, more people in the mentoring space. Also, as you get older, well, hopefully you become wiser as well, and therefore that you have more that you can bring to the table. And as far as my mastering is concerned, man, it's been an exceptionally good run, and the studio is still, and the studio is still going.
Yeah.
So for me, it's there comes a point where you got to kind of not necessarily hang up the boots entirely, but you got to make way for these kids. In the same way that as I was a young kid, I was mentored by these great people. And the reason I do what I do, fellas, is because I never forgot the kindness extended to me as a youngster by other engineers who are at the top of their game, didn't know me from a bar of soap, had no obligation to me whatsoever, and yet they still took the time of day to make me feel special and to help me develop and, see where my skill was and encourage that and be available for me when I require them. And so there's nothing I can do to pay these people back. So all I can do is pay it forward. And that was part of what made them great in my eyes. They were great at their job and they were well known and they worked with all these great artists, etc. But what really made them super duper great in my eyes was the fact that they were just so humble and willing to help. And thought, well, one day if I get to a point where I've reached that kind of level or get into my own studio or have my own thing going on, then I made a pact with myself and I will do the same thing. I felt I had a contract with the universe to do that.
Yeah, it's amazing. And talking of artists and stuff like that, like you've worked with like huge number of artists and stuff over the years. Like, what are some of the names that you've kind of worked with?
Nobody that anyone would know in the UK, I don't think. It's funny when people ask that question. I always find I get like a rabbit in the headlights because I don't. That's one of the things I don't really think. From an outsider's point of view, I understand it's really interesting because it's a world they don't understand, and so they want to get an insight into. And I'm not trying to shirk the question, but what I would suggest people is, if they want, you can put a link to my website that states all that. Because here's the thing, right? I never got into music because I wanted to work with rock stars per se. It was always about a lifestyle. It was always about, I wanted to do something that I really loved. I worked out very early, working in my dad's businesses as a youngster during school holidays and seeing people that were living these lives of drudgery, getting up at 5 a.m, clocking on, clocking off, and every waking hour was about getting to the end of the day or getting to Friday, getting to the weekend, and hoping that Monday would never roll around. And I saw so much of that as a young adolescent man that I said, fuck this is not for me. I knew that I didn't want to go to university, even though I was good enough to do it. I wanted to do something I love doing, and it wasn't about money. It wasn't about the rock stars. It was about job satisfaction. I just realised that if I'm going to be spending such a big percentage of my waking hours in work, I may as well, really focus on finding something I love doing, which I was fortunate enough to do at a young age. A lot of there's a lot of people I see out there in their 20s who've got no idea, and that's okay. But, there's nothing wrong with being in your 20s and really not knowing it. Society puts so much pressure on people about, you got to have it worked out. You need to have all your subjects in order before you go to university, and you got to have it all mapped out. And if you actually know what you want to do, well, that's great. God bless you. More power to you. You're more than 50% there, because the hardest part is really knowing what you want. But yet the traditional system imposes so much pressure on kids these days. I consider myself fortunate that I knew, and I was very driven, very, very driven to pursue that at all costs. But just going back to the thing about the artists, that to me never mattered, and I'm not trying to be aloof and
no, that's fine.
But more to the point, fellas, when any record that I worked on that was successful, let's just define successful as, charted well, was heard on the radio, was a hit, or got gold or platinum or whatever. These records were destined to probably become that anyway. By the time a record gets to me, it's already mixed, it's already done. As I said, I'm the guy that puts the finishing touches. There's a whole line of rubber ducks that need to line up for a record to become a hit. I get to work with an embarrassment of riches when it comes to talent, and the tragedy is that the 99% of them will probably not ever be discovered by anybody. It'll be a very small percentage of people that'll hear them, and that's it. They won't get on the radio. They won't become stars. They won't be touring big tours. And yet they're just as, when you hear their stuff, you think, fuck, why is it? And the reality is, especially when it comes to, terrestrial radio as we know it, it's like a funnel. There's only so much that can get in. And there are so many other factors that are involved that at your control. So I'm not responsible for making hit records. I'm lucky enough that I get to wear a Guernsey on a team that was more than likely going to win a premiership, if that makes sense. And I just happen to be a sub that comes on the last 10 minutes of the game. It's like, imagine, you're playing the FA Cup, you're 4-0 up, right? And you just happen to go on to sub for 10 minutes. You play an important role. You want to make sure that, nothing goes awry or what have you. But, but you're just one part of the whole team. Yeah. And so as a marketing person, that's what I'm and I'm not and I'm not trivializing my role, and I'm not saying it's not important. It is important, but it's just one part of, it's one cog in a machine. Everything has to be working together, and when it works and it clicks, that's tremendous, you know.
Yeah. And when you say about obviously the mastering, you said earlier about obviously it's different devices. They all have different kind of specific sounds. And is that one file that comes out the back, or is that multiple files that come out the back, so then they get dividends out to the radio if it's going to radio, or is it kind of just one file?
It's usually one file.
Okay.
The only time you would master things a little bit differently is when you're putting it onto vinyl, which, as we know, has been enjoying, you know, huge resurgence for some time, and I don't see that, you know, quietening off for some time yet.
Sure.
There is some talk about streaming services. There are some engineers that would argue that, well, you need to do things a certain way for Spotify or for, you know, Apple, iTunes, or and look, they may have interesting arguments to support that. My personal opinion is, if mastering is about translation, which means it should play well across everywhere, whether it goes on Spotify, whether it goes on iTunes, or whether it goes on fuck knows where, it should sound good. And besides, these companies all have their own proprietary software algorithms and shit that they apply on top. And they're usually changing anyway. So you can't just sit there and try and second guess, well, what is Spotify going to do in their algorithm this week? What's Apple going to be doing? You can't. So you bypass all of that by saying, right, I'm going to make it sound great, and it should sound great regardless.
Yeah, that's amazing. So I was just quite interested in when you were saying that this is a very kind of ignorant question from my behalf, is there a formula that you think, you know, you're saying about the ducks in a row and everything like that, is there a certain, you just kind of know with that one person or that one song that this is gonna go somewhere? Or is it just literally, like you said, if you can get in that funnel, if you've got the contacts, maybe that's where it can get a little bit, you know, in front of more people, and it has the potential to go further?
I don't believe there is any kind of formula. If there was, then everything would be a hit, or, you know, but it's not. What I believe in is that there are so many things at play that it's impossible for one person to completely influence the whole scheme of things. I mean, all you can do is just, you know, each person just do the best they can, and so. There's no formula as such, mate. I don't believe so. There are records out there that you go, how the fuck did that happen? And that became a hit. It's a pile of shit I've heard. And then like I said, I hear so much stuff come through. And mate, if I was a betting man when it came to what would be a hit record, I'd be on Skid Row now. I would have done all my dough, you know. I'd be the worst gambler in that respect, honestly. And so no one really knows. There are things that can help. Maybe it's when it comes to money and marketing, but mate, it's, you know, to get like a number one in the US, they say you got a greater chance of getting struck by lightning. You know. Wow. Getting a number one on the US, getting a number one in the US, something ridiculous like that. So it's the odds are stacked against you, put it that way. Yeah.
Go on, Drew.
I was just gonna. I didn't know if you had any more questions. I was gonna dive into Tony's other passion for.
Yeah, I was literally about
motivational speaking. So I don't know if you had any more questions about mastering.
No, that's fine. I was about to go into the motivational stuff.
So you mentioned that obviously it was a big influence, your childhood, that made you want to go into sort of motivational speaking towards sort of younger people. Was there any other sort of reasoning for why you had that change in industry?
I guess just my own personal journey, Drew. You know, I spent a lot of, I don't want to say that my life was shit. Compared to others, I think my life was was very, very good. But I grew up with a lot of pressure from my father to be to do well academically. My mother was a paranoid schizophrenic. Of course, didn't know that until much later, after she passed away, in fact, to be honest with you, that came to light. But explained a bit about her, her character. It was very unpredictable. So as a child, I grew up 1 minute being rewarded for doing something right and then getting punished for doing exactly the same thing. And of course, it brings a lot of confusion as you just don't know, what to do here and whatnot. And look, nobody has got the monopoly on pain and suffering and shit in the world. But I didn't. Some people go through stuff early, and they manage to turn it inside out and make it work for them. And unfortunately, that wasn't me. I fell into a spiral of drugs, a lot of very low self-esteem, and carried that through the majority of my life. And to the outside world, people thought I was doing all right and I was happy and positive and all. I feel like I always think I was a positive person, but I was positive in my head. But in here, my heart was never ever bought into it. So, and that's why I was always frustrated as to shit. Why is it that so and so's doing okay and so and so's doing okay? I'm doing all the right things. I'm saying all the right things. And it was that classic case of your head saying one thing, your heart saying another. There's a disconnect. So when you're not congruent in what's going on, well, you're going to be vibrating at a frequency that's not going to be attracting opportunities or the synchronicities or the things that other people seem to be enjoying. But to be perfectly, but I think I'd always enjoyed talking to, like how it all started though, to be honest, Drew, was into various schools, audio schools, and what I realised is that because what I do is very niche, the majority of students I went to speak to, they were interested in what I was saying, but not as much as recording and mixing because it was better known, more profile, more prestige, all that kind of stuff. And it occurred to me that if all these kids in this room, let's say we've got 100 kids in the room, conservatively, 5% at best, would be really interested in what I had to say. The others were interested in varying degrees, but I'm talking about really, really fucking engaged, yeah? And the other 95% in varying degrees. It was up to me to try and make it entertaining and, and carry on and whatnot. But the one thing I did know, at 100, if not 100%, certainly 90% of the students that were there were interested in working full-time. And so what I decided to do in part of my talk was incorporate a little extra bit at the end, which was like a bit of a pep talk, encouraging them to, follow their dreams, pursue their desires, find the thing that they really got excited about. And so at the end of these talks, I'd often, had a go, I'd get a call or an email, and I said, hey man, thanks so much for coming to speak to the kids. It was a great talk. But I'll tell you what, that last 10 minutes, everyone just keeps talking about the last 10 minutes that you spoke about. And so it got me thinking, well, all right, well, I signed up for a mastering talk, but I'm going to start incorporating more and more of that. And then over time, it's not that one has been replaced with the other. But again, if we think about growth and contribution, where can I contribute more? There's more people interested in doing well in life, whether it's music or anything, as opposed to people that just want to become mastering engineers or want to do well in mastering. That's so. And so I put my energy and focus there, and I was doing that for quite a long time, and I'd never formalised it as such. I never really became a livelihood. It was just something I enjoyed doing, and I did it alongside. And just over time, as I started becoming more interested in personal development, and then fast forward to being mentored by Peter Sage, probably about 6-7 years ago now, where I first got to hear about him and got put my life savings into doing a one-on-one mentoring with him. That's when things really started to turn around, and that's when things really started to change, and so therefore it gave me more confidence in myself to pursue this. And because of the transformations that were happening for me, I thought, wow, what can I do with this? How can I take this knowledge I've learned? How do I contextualize it in the artistic creative realm? And how can I put it out there, to give back to my community, which is the music community. And as I get older, more and more, it's a stronger thing. I mean, for the record, 90% of my income, if not more, comes from my mastering. I still do a fair bit of speaking. Quite often, most of the stuff I do is voluntary. I'm happy to do that. I'm at a point now in life of transitioning where I feel like I want to focus more energy into mentoring and working on ways of how to monetize that. And so now I think, well, okay, how do I do that? By speaking at every opportunity I can. Hence every podcast that comes my way, every opportunity, whether I'll speak to 2 people in a room or 20 people in a room or in a Zoom conference. So now I'm just really putting a concerted effort and focus into this, and because quite frankly, it's lovely to, obviously it's great to catch up with Josh after all these years, and great to meet you too, Drew, but it's an opportunity for me to exercise my speaking muscle and talk about the stuff that matters to me and that's near and dear to me and that I care about very deeply, in the hope that maybe someone will hear this podcast or see it, and it may touch them in a certain way that I could never dream of, and be like a domino that creates just enough momentum to create a chain reaction that sets them off on a trajectory that it otherwise wouldn't, hopefully into a better lifeline, better path, better outcome. So, and of course I'll never know if that's the case, but I do know that at least if I do this kind of thing, then I set up the potential for that possibility to happen.
Really inspiring first part.
Wow.
really good. Yeah, I love it. Tony, keeping with this kind of theme, what are some of the things that you might talk about in that motivation, or some of the teachings that you might kind of pass on?
Well, I think the first and foremost and most fundamental thing is the understanding that there's nothing wrong with you. Everyone's fear is the fear of not being enough, which is a conditioning that we receive from parents who don't know any better. We're unconditionally loved as children, and then we learn that in order for us to get, your parents are the whole everything in your life. Your parents, guardian, whoever's looking after you, and then to go from being loved unconditionally until you get to an age where there's an understanding that you can communicate with each other, and then all of a sudden, from being loved unconditionally, the people that matter to you more than anything in the world now are giving you a message of, well, Drew, if you want me to love, accept, and appreciate or validate you, you're going to have to act a certain way. You're going to have to say certain things. You're going to have to acquiesce. No ice cream for you if you don't shut up. If you don't, if you don't clean up your room, you don't watch cartoons, or you won't be on your phone, or what have you. But everything then becomes conditional, and so from your earliest memory as a child, your access and reference to unconditional love is completely gone, and you just remember that. And so when you go into the world, school, peer group pressure, throw in marketing, throw in social media, so many people are feeling a lack and the feeling of not enough, and so they're acting and doing things and being things that are not them. They're not being authentic. They're not being true to themselves, because again, the fear of what people think about them, what are people going to say, how am I going to look, how's this going to reflect amongst the people around me. So it's drilling that in early to them to help them understand that there's nothing wrong with them, and by explaining a little bit about how we've come to this point.
Yeah.
And then say, look, yes, you are programmed that way, but just because you are programmable or programmed, it doesn't mean that you can't change the way how you become programmed, because we're a programmable organism. And so how do we do that? Okay, well, we've got to think about our peer group, who are our friends, who are the people around us, who are the people that are mostly in our orbit, that have the most influence on us, but also the people to whom we contribute as well. And for a lot of people, it's really hard to sit down and, you know, as I've had to have, shall we just call them amicable divorces, you know, with people that were, I guess, looking back on it now, quite toxic.
Yeah.
But again, because if you feel the need to be with someone, you have this codependency that, you know, well, what am I going to do? I'm going to be alone. How am I going to cope? Who's going to want me? Who will be my friend? What are people going to say if they find out that this and this happened? So just inviting people to look at things like their peer group and look, these changes and these transformations are not easy, because when we go through this stuff, we go through a grieving, a mourning process, because we are losing. And the people that get upset, in my experience, you know, the people that got upset with me and were hanging shit on me for deciding to go down a different path, it wasn't that they were bad people per se, and they were hating on me directly, but they were losing as well. Who were they losing? They were losing the guy that they could, you know, I'd be the butt of the fat joke, or I'd be, you know, the person at whom they would, you know, be able to, you know, project their bullshit and their emotional insecurities and all this kind of stuff that wasn't serving me. All of a sudden, you know, you're out, you know, of the firing line, and then they're like, well, you know, they're losing someone. So they do kind of love you in a weird kind of way, but you know, all of a sudden you're not going to be around to be that person anymore, and it's not easy. And so we talk about that, and really inviting them to look at this concept of loving yourself. And for some people, cringe when they hear, "Oh, loving yourself," when really what I'm saying, what I'm meaning is, it's like being comfortable with who you are, understanding yourself as to who you are, accepting all of you, all of your good and bad points. You know, it's interesting, you know, that the things that you may think are great in your mind, your perception, for other people, they think it's that's what makes you the bee's knees, you know. But it's just understanding that you are a whole of everything, and you just accept all of you for who you are, and you give yourself a break. You learn how to be gentle on yourself. You learn how to forgive yourself for things of the past. You learn not to identify any longer by your mistakes or by your perceived shortcomings or by your failures or whatever you want to call it. And so, and this is a process. This is stuff that you can understand intellectually, and it was explained to me many times, and even by Peter. And even in the early days of being mentored by Peter, I got it, but I never really got it. It took time for it to really sink in, again, for my heart and my mind to be aligned, to really get this, for that connection to happen, so that then I could start operating in the world from a very different place, to emit a very different energy, you know. And that's when I really started seeing shifts in my life, real fair income kind of shifts, because my internal world had started to become clearer and more consistent in what I was thinking. And then, but my heart bought into it. I believed in what I was thinking. Yeah. And so when I believed into what I was thinking, and I knew, and became a knowing, not just the intellectual, I get it. Because a lot of us get all this shit. We've been told 1,000 times. We've read it in a million places. We've seen a million TED Talks. We've read the books. We've seen the webinars. We fucking wear the T-shirts. And yet, you know, how many times, you know, you see people who can quote every fucking quote of every philosopher. They got every meme on Facebook going on, every fridge magnet on their fucking thing. And yet they're nowhere near anywhere where they like to think they are, because it's all up here, but their heart's not. And I lived in that space for a very long period of time. But you have to allow yourself to accept that, to receive that, until life will not give you what you want until you're ready to take it on and believe that you're worthy of it. When you believe that you're worthy of these things, then things will come easier to you with less grind. You know, there's still effort, there's still work, there's still focus, and doing all the things that you need to do, you know, getting off your ass and applying yourself and shoulder to the wheel. But not that much of a grind where just every minute of the day is so fucking exhausting. So it's these other things that like to talk about, and then just throwing examples from my life of I tend to be very transparent about that stuff. There's a lot of motivational speakers that, and this is with no disrespect to them, but they've all been incredibly successful. The minute their mother gave birth to them, they were on the cover of Forbes magazine and made $1 trillion by the time they were 18 months old before they could fucking, run. And that's great and whatnot. But I'm not that guy. I'm the guy that will tell you about my drug addiction, that will tell you about my failed marriage, that will tell you about my low self-esteem, that will tell you about where I fucked up, how even to this day I still have my stuff going on. I still have my moments of self-doubt. I still have my moments where I wonder, did I do the right thing? The difference now is that when I find myself in those situations, I'm a lot better at A, the awareness to the thought, and then B, understanding that, hey, that was just a thought. That's not real. That's just your fucking thought. All right? So, and it's like putting that thought on trial and cross-examining, where well, of course, it's bullshit, And so, and I'll let it go. So what I would hang on to for a virtual lifetime or days or months or whatever I'll carry for a very short period of time, and then it's metabolized and it's out the back door. It's done. I haven't got it worked out. I'm not perfect. I'm okay. I'm okay with that. I just, as cliches is, I just strive to do the best I can day in and day out. Some days I do better than others. But it's all about, for me, it's about how do I maintain a consistent level of congruency, understanding that I'm not always going to get it right, but also knowing that I can be gentle enough with myself to know that if I don't get it right, I won't beat myself up as much as I used to. I won't go back to using drugs to try and hide, my fears or escape my problems or all that kind of shit. And just kind of be better in that respect. So they're the kind of themes and issues that I get to talk to when I talk to people. Mainly.
Have you had to change your style at all? The reason I say this is I know you as someone who's very loose-lipped, go with the flow, say it exactly how it is. The older profanities come in and stuff like that. And that's the thing that I love about you is that's exactly what you are. And you like me or you don't. So get on with it. And when I met you, I thought this is just everyone needs to know you. That's generally what I thought, because someone needs a Tony in their life. It was that kind of amazing thing of, standing in the the Millionaires Business School, seeing over and there's this giant tatted up, bellowing voice, that Aussie voice, but you come over and you were like the best person just to chat to. It was like super positive and stuff like that. And I thought, have you had to change that at all when you're talking to? I mean, obviously you said kids, like we're talking kind of 18 to 85.
Yeah. Look,
have you changed that at all? Because it's quite relatable.
I think if there's one thing that's changed, Lewis, is that I tend to swear less, and it was interesting because I yes, I can be profane and I can say fuck and this and what have you, but but again, Peter once, he put it to me that part of that is a persona. And it was a bit overdone as part of trying to create, again, something that you're not, really not being authentic. And another mentor of mine, a recent guy called Craig Harper, I recommend. Now he's a guy that swears a lot, but for whatever reason, he I don't know, not he gets away with it, but I think that in my case, it was just overdone. And one of the things I never used to accept about me is I'm a pretty smart motherfucker. I am. I'm a very fucking intelligent motherfucker. But I used to kind of reject that. And people used to tell me all the time, "Oh, you're really intelligent. You got a great command of the language and whatnot." And so, but I rejected that. Again, that was just me not willing to accept, certain parts of me because I didn't think it would reflect well, and because I'm a guy who's got tattoos and shit, and I felt there was some kind of persona that I needed to live up to, which again is that's not where the authenticness comes from. And when I sat with myself and then had to honestly appraise it and go, well, you know what, in real life, when I'm not in a group of people, you know, I swear, but I don't swear all the time. So why do I need to emphasize saying fuck? You know, in fact, it's probably got more effect if I swear to emphasize. If I'm really emphasizing a point and it's natural, it comes natural, as opposed to almost a scripted thing of like, right, I need to fulfill this amount of cuss words and what have you. And I think that held me back. And again, it was that whole thing. Remember earlier on, I said, hang on a minute, I'm doing this, but why is it working? And that's a classic example of, you know, the heart and mind not being at one, where my head's saying all this, and my heart's saying, well, yeah, you drop a few clangers, but that's not you.
Yeah,
that's not, you know, you're actually a sweet, sensitive, intelligent guy. So why not allow that to come through? Why not let the world see that? What is your fear around that? And so I had to go and work on that and explore that, you know. So once I got to a point of going, oh, yeah, you know, and started embracing that, then all of a sudden I started to see the shift. Things are starting to work a bit better. So
I think you made a really good point of actually. Go on, sorry.
No, I'm the same guy that I'm essentially the same person you met at MBS, but I just learned to love more of me, you know, and understand that there's this side of me that I was pushing away that I don't need to. Why? You know, this is what the world wants to see us in our full bloom of our full expression. And we're all unique. We're all different. We all like to think that, oh, well, look at that guy. He's this one, is that one. Look at that girl. And, you know, and things like social media, Instagram, for example, are the worst culprits for really poisoning people's minds because, again, it takes you away from what? It takes you away from you and who you are and exploring you so that, because, again, it's ironic, isn't it? Everyone craves authenticity and everyone wants authenticity, and yet you see in the social media world, we see anything but, you know, for the most part, not authentic expression. So yeah, I'm the same person, man. I've just managed to, appreciate and love more elements of me and realize that, oh, wow, I've got more going on than I actually thought.
Yeah. No, that's really good. I think you said it earlier, is that when you naturally feel that those kind of experiences and stuff come on, it comes from that heart and line of mind because you feel the passion and it kind of comes through that way, where before it might have been just a character that was kind of getting people's attention. Now it's actually got backing of power behind the word to prove a point for them to remember. It's almost like that kind of NLP anchoring, like kind of getting them to really in their mindset of kind of nailing it in. Yeah, fascinating stuff. Well, look, we appreciate your time.
I have one more question just before we wrap it up.
Yeah, let's go.
I've noticed your name. Is there much of a story behind Jack the Bear?
Oh, look, if you gave me £1 sterling for every time I said this story, mate, I'd be talking to you from my yacht off Saint-Tropez right now. But let me give you. Yeah, sure. I'll be happy to tell you the story. There's two stories that happen almost back to back in interesting ways. It's quite freakish. But the first of these events was being on a subway in New York with the mate in the studio. I was just bumming around and learning. Walking in on the subway in the middle of an argument. Two guys in the subway, they're arguing away. We walk into the carriage, and as we walk in, the first thing I hear these two guys say, one says to the other, "Don't blame me, blame Jack the Bear, man." And he turned around and looked at me, and he pointed at me directly and said, "There, talk to him." And now my friend heard this, thought it was fucking hilarious, and you got to understand, I'm a kid now. I'm in New York. I have no fucking idea what hit me. And I said, "What's so funny, man?" And he said, you. I said, "What's so funny about me?" He said, "He called you Jack the Bear." And I said, "What the fuck does that mean?" He said, "Well, those guys are Canadian. He said, you'll get to learn in time the Canadian accent. So they're Canadian, and they must understand the lumber workers or shit like that. He says, because Jack the Bear is the person that you blame when things go wrong. So if you're cutting trees and the tree falls the wrong way and it crashes on someone's house, they say, oh, don't blame me, blame Jack the Bear. And the irony in all of that is that he said that you're learning a craft where you're supposed to be fixing people's problems, making their shit sound good and fixing them up. And yet Jack the Bear's the fuck up the fuck ups. So there's this irony, you know. And so he thought that was fucking hilarious and said, right, you're Jack the Bear. And so he started calling me that, and people were hearing that. And then someone said, yeah, that's a great brand. You should stick with that. And so I did. In fact, if you look, oh no, sorry, I'm not over there. I don't know if you can, hang on. I don't know if you can tell, but Jack, that was in fact my that was my first tattoo.
Wow.
And so look, that's been with me forever and a day, and it'll be with. In fact, one of the most commonly asked questions I get today: what do we call you, Jack or Tony? You know? And honestly, I'm okay with other, but look, if I went to the Spend Loves for afternoon tea, I would introduce myself as Tony to your mother, okay, or your dad. Hello, Mrs. Spenlove. My name's Tony, and if I went to the Eastham home, I'd be Mr. and Mrs. Eastham.
Jack the Bear.
My name's Tony. well, listen. If your parents were industry people, but if I'm out and about industry, think I'm Jack, you know. But no split personality, no Jekyll and Hyde, or at least no longer anyway. Not since I stopped doing that.
Yeah.
Not since I stopped the jokes, but fellas, I so enjoyed this chat. I feel like we've only just scratched the surface, and there's so much more we can talk about. I hope again we'll get together and we can talk about some other stuff, because there's a lot of interesting things to discuss. You know, my journey through addiction, my journey through weight release, and I was a very, very hefty guy at one stage, and got rid of a lot. I put on just a little bit during the COVID period, but look, for an old bloke, I'm still
got it, mate. Still got it. Never left.
For 57, I'm still doing all right.
That's it.
Love that.
But yeah, man, I love life. Life is beautiful. Life is precious, and no one knows when the expiry date is. And I feel the fact that I'm not dead yet tells me that I've got something here to live for. I don't know exactly what that is, but there's something there. And so I'm just going to go for it, man. And so that, whenever the end comes, if I get a chance to, be if I get the choice and I get to lie on the deathbed with my loved ones around me, I want to say, well, fuck, I gave it a good shot, and there's no loose ends and there's no regrets. So if I can do that, then I think it's been a life well lived.
Amazing.
It's pretty awesome. Just before we go, Tony, we do this with all of our guests. I know you didn't want to speak about it for too long, but just going back onto lockdown, what would you say to people has been your top tip for getting through lockdown? What's got you through it?
I think thinking about the things that you're grateful for, just taking stock of life and an inventory of like, let's just look at what I have and where I'm at. Because for most people, I think that it was Hippocrates, I think, if I'm not mistaken, Hippocrates, anyway, one of those OG Greek philosophers, quoted, and I'm just paraphrasing, but he said something along the lines of, be grateful for what you have today, because for what you have once was just a wish. And so often we found ourselves going, oh, geez, wouldn't it be nice if I had that? And then you get something, and then you get over it. And it's like, and then you tell them something else. So I think to stop, take inventory, take stock for what you have, who you have in your life, because for a lot of people, that stuff, they just don't have. The people are still starving, people still homeless, people still living just incredibly bad lives. So, and that's not a reason for you to get guilty about it, or but again, it's just to remind yourself of what you have. So gratitude, and also, look at opportunities of how you can make someone's life better. We've seen situations where people have gone out and up until these times, a lot of people wouldn't think much about their neighbour. How many times we hear stories about, Uncle Bert, died. No one knew that he was dead for 3 weeks. Whereas now people are knocking on people's doors. Hey, you all right? Yeah, you need anything? Can I go down to the groceries? Can I get you something? This idea of community again, of getting in touch with community and people looking out for each other. So, so the tip of, gratitude and how can I serve? What can I do? What can I do in order to serve people? Because ultimately that's what we're here for. It's all about servitude, or how can I contribute? Yeah. So I think if you can think about those two things, then this can be a much more productive than sitting down and getting pissed and moaning about how this is unfair and that's not right and all this kind of bullshit that people tend to, put so much energy and focus on.
Beautiful.
Love that.
Look at that.
There we go.
Ladies and gents, Tony Mantz, or Jack the Bear, whichever one you want to call him. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. Well, it's big love
pleasure,
to both
mate.
of you. Good to see you both. Take care. Best luck with your podcast. Hope it goes really well. And please let's stay in touch and hopefully we'll be able to chat again soon.
Always.
Love that. 100%.
Yeah.
All right, then.
Big love.
Care,
Cheers, Tony.
Be well.
Love, Tony. Take it easy, buddy.
See ya. You too.
There you go. Ladies and gents, Tony Mantz, Jack the Bear. What a story.
That was
incredible character,
really,
right?
really interesting.
Like you said,
Really,
we'll
really
get
interesting.
100% getting back on, go through, the things that you listed, the drug addiction, and yeah, the weight and stuff like that. I think incredible. Love that guy, man. So there you go, ladies and gents. Drew, doing the honours. Signing out.
Thank you for watching the XXL podcast. Like, subscribe, and we've also decided to live stream our podcasts. So if you don't have if you can't watch these on YouTube for whatever reason, I mean, I don't know why you wouldn't be able to watch them on YouTube.
Yeah, I was going to say.
We have started live streaming our podcasts over on Twitch as well.
Yeah. So we'll start notifying people.
Twitch, the link will be in the description. If you have a Twitch account and you want to go watch our videos on Twitch and you want to watch them live, we will be letting people know when we're about to record over on the Instagram, which is also down in the description as well. So go give that a follow. Like, subscribe,
New times,
share the video, comment, all the fun stuff.
Yep. If you want to come on, let us know.
Peace and love, man.
Big
I
love.
don't know why I did that.
Big love.